So life is a series of ups and downs, highs and lows. And those lows usually involve other people in some form or fashion, even if it has to do with the project. A lot of times something we're trying to accomplish involves other people. And when that conflict comes in, we usually feel like someone is not treating us like they used to. And that is a dangerous place to navigate through, because in our fallen flesh as believers, we still, the Spirit of God is in us, and we're to walk by the Spirit and not the lust of the flesh. But the lust of the flesh is, hey, I've got a right to respond to what is happening to me. I'm justified. And so I want to correct this. I want to get my hands on it, and I want to correct it and let this person know what they're doing. Now, it's always great to speak the truth in love, but sometimes, even as you've tried to speak the truth, people aren't listening to you. And so you have to really be careful and be patient in the midst of this and not get overly frustrated. Wait on the Lord to show you what to do. There's a story in the Bible in Genesis 31. It starts to really kind of develop what is taking place with Jacob and Laban. Jacob had fled to this, he had to flee his homeland and go live with Laban, his uncle. And he starts working for Laban, falls in love with one of Laban's daughters, and they make an agreement. Laban manipulates him in the agreement, takes advantage of him, says that, hey, you work for 7 years and that'll take care of the dowry for you to marry my daughter. And then he tricks him in that and makes him work another 7 years. Then he just keeps leveraging how God is blessing Jacob to benefit his own bank account, if you will. And he's not treating Jacob fairly. And he keeps kind of manipulating him and trying to keep him in this spot where he can continue to benefit and ride Jacob's coattails and benefit from those coattails in his relationship with him, because Jacob was in a right relationship with God. And this gets to a boiling point for Jacob where he feels like it's time for him to go back home. He wants to leave. He can't figure out a way to leave. And now he's in this very unhealthy relationship with this guy that he doesn't know what to do. And so he hears some rumors that Jacob or Laban's sons are spreading. Some of his guys come back and report to him and say, hey, man, Jacob's guys are saying bad things that aren't true about you. And so it says that Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it has been. That's what it says in verse 2 of chapter 31. So he goes to his wife and he tells Rachel, and he says, look, your father's attitude is not what it was before, and God has been with me. And so he's like, I'm trying to work through this, but he hasn't reacted yet. And then through this process, he ends up having a vision from God, because that's how God spoke to them primarily in the Old Testament. They weren't indwelt with the Spirit, and so the God would have to speak to them in visions. And in this vision, God shows him what to do to get himself in the right position to be able to leave. And he says this to him in verse 12. He says, I've seen all that Laban has been doing to you. Man, when I came across that was so encouraging to me, because I feel this sometimes. I feel it frequently in life, that people sometimes, what their attitude used to be, it's shifted and it's not what it has been. And in my flesh, I always want to call them and tell them, or pull them to the side and just tell them, hey, you're not treating me right. And when I came across this, I see that God says, hey, I see what's happening. I see what's happening to you, Jacob. And that told me that God sees what's happening to me in my relationships. And what I need to do is wait on God and labor in my communication with God, not in my communication with the person, and let God lead me through the process to ultimate resolution and freedom in what is tripping me up. And the more I labor with the Lord, the more patient I can be. And when you start to do this, you will start moving slower, and you will notice that God will present the opportunities. And that's exactly what God does. He tells Jacob, yeah, it's time for you to go. You're free to go. And so he goes, and then Laban comes to hunt him down. And in the process, Laban is visited by God as well, and he's rebuked by God. But when he gets to Jacob, he doesn't say anything about that rebuking. He still tries his same old manipulative tactics that he's been doing throughout their relationship. And so Jacob responds to him and says in verse 42, if the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you. And so that tells us that Jacob waited on God to the point where God was going to be the one rebuking, and he spoke the truth, and he spoke it in love, as Paul tells us to do, and he walked out in freedom, not having to worry about how he treated Laban, knowing that he treated Laban as God would have him to treat him, and God released him from that relationship in a very healthy way, and he never had to worry about Laban taking advantage of him again, because God rebuked Laban in the process. So be careful when you're going through conflict that you don't put your hands on it to provide protection for yourself like the world tells you to do. Otherwise, you'll short circuit God's hand being on it. And when you talk about protection, you always want to be walking in the protection of the hand of God, or you'll only have the safety of what your hands can provide.